In today's video, we're going to be talking about reflection. After watching this video, you should be able to explain what the law of reflection is and be able to distinguish between specular and diffuse reflection. So let's get right into this. Just a quick review, light does travel in a straight line, which we call a ray. Okay, so if you think about a flashlight and the beam of light that a flashlight creates, that's kind of how all light travels in a straight line. And then also we talked about in the previous lesson or previous lessons about two types of objects. There's something called a luminous object, which would be something like the sun, a light bulb, a flashlight, something that actually produces light, and a illuminated object, or something that is basically having light hit it, and that's what's allowing us to see the object. So for instance, I'm in illuminated object. You can see me right now because I have lights on in the room, or the moon is an illuminated object. Okay, and then if you kind of keep this saying in mind, without light there would be no sight, is very true. Okay, if we don't have light, you wouldn't be able to see anything because you need that reflection off of objects to be able to perceive things. Okay, so you all, I'm sure, stood in front of a mirror before. Today we're talking about just flat planar mirrors, okay? And these images in a mirror are created by, it could be either a luminous or an illuminated source, okay? So it could be a flashlight or it could be just an object that's having light reflect off of it. In this picture, here is the object over here, okay? And pretend it's a flashlight or whatever, some sort of object that we'll say is producing light, just to kind of keep things simple. And let's say this ray of light is coming off the object towards the mirror, okay, so this direction. And this ray that is coming off the object towards the mirror is titled the incident ray. Again, we'll be using that term a lot, so it's good to keep that in mind. You have the incident ray, it strikes the mirror, and then the ray of light that reflects off the mirror is called the reflected ray, which makes sense, it's terminology, makes sense, and then eventually hits an eyeball, could be your eye, and you now see this image being created in the mirror. Okay, and this image is behind the mirror, so it's called a virtual image, and we'll get into that later. But that's basically reflection in a nutshell. Okay, it's just basically light from an object comes off the object, hits the mirror, reflects off the mirror, and then the eyeball can see an image created in the mirror. Okay, and just basically this slide is about to know this incident ray is the ray that's going to strike the mirror, and then the reflected ray is the ray that comes off of the mirror. So there's this law that I mentioned earlier on. It's called the law of reflection. And basically the law of reflection states that the angle of incidence, okay, or that angle that's coming from the object and striking the mirror, is equal to the angle of reflection relative to this thing called the normal. And in the next slide I'm going to have a picture showing the law of reflection. I think a picture is better than actually trying to write this law out into words. So on this page, or on this picture I should say, typically in physics problems they will show mirrors as a straight line with like dashed lines behind it. So this is a mirror down here, okay? And we'll say over here that this is your object. See, you can figure it as whatever you want, a tennis ball, whatever, okay? So light from this object is coming off of it, and again this is called the incidence ray. It strikes this mirror, okay, and then the light wave reflects, and this is your reflective ray, or your reflected ray, whichever you want to call it, is coming off the mirror, and then like here is an eyeball. Okay, and there's some eyelashes for it. Okay, so it can see this object, and the eye would actually see the object like somewhere back here, really probably off the screen. We'd have to trace this ray back. We'll talk about that later. What this slide's all about basically is that this thing called the law of reflection, and to be able to figure out the angle at which a ray is going to reflect off of a mirror, you have to draw this line called the normal, and the normal is just perpendicular to the mirror, okay? And so first thing you might want to do if you're doing a problem trying to figure out, the angle at which this ray of light reflects off the mirror, you should draw your normal in. So take a ruler and just draw a line going straight up and down. And then this theta I is standing for the angle of incidence. Okay, so this angle right here is the angle of incidence, and that angle there is going to equal this angle over here, the angle of reflection. Okay, and you can see the law of reflection down here on the bottom. Basically, it's saying that the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. Okay, so nothing too ridiculously hard to remember, I don't think, but it does involve a little bit of drawing and thinking and that kind of deal. Okay, so that's the law of reflection. And then there's two types of reflection that you should be familiar with. The first is called specular reflection. And basically, specular reflection occurs off of smooth surfaces, such as mirrors. I don't know if you guys have ever seen like a really calm day on a lake, and the lake looks like glass almost, and you can see the reflection right off the lake very easily. Those are all examples of specular reflection. A smooth spoon, you can see your face in a spoon. That's a specular reflection. Okay? The other type of reflection is called a diffuse reflection. And basically, diffuse reflection is a reflection off of a rough surface, such as clothing, paper, asphalt, you name it. That would be a diffuse reflection. And the majority of things you probably see in life are diffuse reflection. So like, I don't see a reflection in my t-shirt right now. Okay, and it's because it's a diffuse reflection. And again, I think a picture helps explain this better than trying to look at text. So if we go to the next slide, here we have two pictures. This guy on the left would be called specular reflection. And here's the big reason why you can actually see a reflection is because as light travels from over here, on this side, as light travels from over here and it hits this flat surface, it could be a mirror, it could be a spoon, it could be a lake, the light waves reflect off of it in such a way that it is able to produce an image. Okay, that's basically what specular reflection is all about. Whereas over here, if you've got, this is at a microscopic level, like obviously t-shirts, don't feel jagged like there's teeth on it or something, but as the light waves hit these different angled, or this kind of rough surface, I should say, they reflect off at really funky angles. Like here's all these different light waves reflecting off. And they still follow the law of reflection. It's just that the angle at which they hit this strange surface, or rough surface, I should stop calling it strange, but rough surface is going to be equal to the angle at which it reflects off. And they don't all reflect off nicely like over here to produce a nice image. Instead, they reflect in a bunch of different ways because they're hitting an object that has this rough surface. And so it doesn't produce an image, is basically the difference. So this side on the right is a diffuse reflection. Okay, so that takes care of today's video. I will see you guys next time.